Frankly, Robin, I don't think it'll ever be too late to buy Bitcoin. The one regret I have about Bitcoin is that I didn't buy more of it earlier. I don't worry when the price of Bitcoin goes down. In fact, I get happy, right? Because it means I get to buy it for cheap. Scarcity like Bitcoin provides us did not exist before the blockchain. The emission schedule is going to come to a stop. In around, I think it's 2140, there will be no more Bitcoin ever produced, which at that point will give Bitcoin an infinite stock to flow, because the more I learn about Bitcoin, the more there is to learn. And he told the world, guess what? Bitcoin is the way. Bitcoin is the asymmetric bet. I'm going to take all of my corporate reserves and put them into Bitcoin. And you know what else? You should do it too. It's really a fascinating time to be alive. That's why I personally am so excited about Bitcoin, because it's really a paradigm shift for humanity. Money is one of the most important things in our lives, and it's completely changing right before our eyes. And most people don't realize it yet, which is, one of the reasons I wrote the book, because, like you, I want everyone to be aware of what's going on so they can take advantage,
Maybe let's just directly jump into the podcast. And before we get started with all the topics and why it's such an amazing life to be amazing time to be alive, give the viewers and the listeners some background of who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
So, I'm a lawyer by trade. I've been practicing law here in the United States for some 35 years or more, and really don't have any special background in economics or certainly, computer science or any of that. I just kind of luckily or, being blessed to do it, I just kind of stumbled into Bitcoin. A friend of mine at work introduced me to it, back in 2017. My orange pilling has been a really long, slow process. It just, over time, I just became more aware of what Bitcoin really is, and the phenomenal breakthrough that Satoshi did when he invented the blockchain. And as you think about it and read about it and look into it, you just realize how this is going to change everything. I really truly believe that that the blockchain in general and Bitcoin in particular is going to change everything about human life on this planet. So I'm just excited to do what I can to share this information with as many people as possible, because, as Bitcoin is a wonderful thing, and it can change your life in many beautiful ways. And frankly, Robin, I don't think it'll ever be too late to buy Bitcoin. I think it'll always be a good idea to trade fiat currency for Bitcoin, but obviously the sooner the better. The one regret I have about Bitcoin is that I didn't buy more of it earlier. Because when I first was told about Bitcoin in 2017, which even then seemed late because it was already trading for like $2,500 for one coin. That seemed ridiculous to me. $2,500 for a piece of fake internet money? No way, right? Because I didn't understand. I didn't know. But now I would love to buy Bitcoin for $2,500, right? $5,000, $10,000. I'd love to buy it at any of those prices. All of those prices that I just sat and watched go by, So that's why I'm passionate about Bitcoin, because the book that I wrote is really the conversation that I wish someone had with me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because the information was out there. I was ignorant of it. And as much as, you and I are in the kind of like the Bitcoin echo chamber, especially on X, we're really kind of preaching to the choir about fiat currency and the evils of central banking and inflation and all that kind of stuff. So when you're in that echo chamber, it can seem obvious, right? That Bitcoin is the way and that fiat is a fraud and that we need to do everything that we can to dump our fiat as quickly as possible and to put it into hard money like Bitcoin. That seems obvious to us because we're in that echo chamber already. But remarkably, well over 90% of the world are not in that echo chamber. And all of this information is unknown to them. And so we're just super early, which is really why I wrote this book. I think it's a shame that so many people are ignorant about this technology and about this financial revolution that we're living through right now. I mean, these are for me, in my view, these are really exciting times to be alive. There is a real paradigm shift happening, and most of the world is is oblivious to it. So that's why I wrote a book about it, to try and spread the word.
It's an interesting one because I truly believe as you are, obviously, as I'm as all in Bitcoin as you can be. I think it's an extremely asymmetric bet where if you are aware of Bitcoin and you educate yourself in Bitcoin, you know something that 99.99% of people don't know. It's almost like an insider trade. It's not like there's no insights in Bitcoin because everything is on the blockchain. You can literally, everything that's inside in Bitcoin, everyone can see. But because the mainstream has done such a great job in making Bitcoin this niche speculative thing that's so bad, because they've done such a great job, for the few people that go beyond that thought experiment from the mainstream media, they have a huge advantage. So it's a blessing and a curse that the mainstream is talking very bad about Bitcoin, and it slowly gets better. But I still hear them saying very stupid things about Bitcoin that just are factually wrong. But because of that, it's an asymmetric bet, and at the same time, when we look about the risk-reward ratio, I think 2025 is the best risk-reward ratio for Bitcoin ever, because we have everyone on our side, and we still have like 99% to go in the upside.
Yeah, it really feels like a cheat code almost, because I'll be 63 this year, so I've been investing for most of my adult life, and I've invested in stocks and even some treasuries and things over the years, and like this, the stock market almost always goes up. I mean, it's like Bitcoin. It can be volatile, but over time, it's always going to go up. But even so, when I was investing in stocks, I was always concerned about whether or not I was investing in the right company, whether or not I was investing at the right time. Was I at the bottom of the market? Was I at the top of the market? And I never really knew. I was never really sure about my investment until a significant enough time had passed, and then the investment either did well for me or did poorly for me, and most of them did well. But Bitcoin, I have no fear about that. In fact, like many Bitcoiners, I don't worry when the price of Bitcoin goes down. In fact, I get happy, right? Because it means I get to buy it for cheap, right? So I'm not worried at all when the price of Bitcoin goes down, because once you understand it, once you understand what it is, once you understand the difference between a truly scarce asset that the world has never known before. This is a truly new thing in the world. And scarcity like Bitcoin provides us did not exist before the blockchain. The closest thing, and I know you know this, but for the benefit of your listeners who may not, the closest thing that we had to scarcity before Bitcoin was gold. That was really the scarcest thing on the planet. But as scarce as gold is and was, and it is, I mean, even with our best technology and production, and we're still producing and mining gold every single year, but even with our best techniques and technology, we only add to the global gold reserve something like 1.5% per year. And that's far scarcer than any other mineral. I mean, silver, I forget the exact numbers, but silver is like, we produce like 12 times more silver than gold. And other metals, even more than that. Copper is way more than that. So before Bitcoin, the scarcest thing that we had was was gold. And gold, one of the things I talk about in my book is one of the reasons that it's functioned as money for so many thousands of years is because gold is very, very, very durable. If you look at I don't know if you've ever seen the mask of Tutankhamun. That
No, what is
mask,
that?
yeah. So it's Tutankhamun was a pharaoh in Egypt like 3,000 years ago, and he was buried with this beautiful golden mask, a funerary mask, and they dug it up, and it's now on display in some museum. I think it's in London, if I'm not mistaken. But it did a tour many, many years ago, and I saw it here when it came to Los Angeles, and it's just beautiful. It's just as pristine as the day they made it, and that just goes to show the durability of gold. Unlike silver, which can tarnish, and other metals which can rust and decay and corrode. Yeah, there it is. That's the mask of Tutankhamun. It's a beautiful thing, and I actually saw that face to face when it came here to Los Angeles several years ago. That mask is 3,000 years old, and it doesn't look a day over. It doesn't even look a week old. I mean, it still looks brand new, and that's a testament to the durability of gold. It doesn't tarnish, it doesn't corrode, it doesn't decay, it doesn't rust. So that's one of the reasons that gold has functioned so well as money for years, because you can if your wealth is in gold, your wealth is going to last. It's not going to decay. And so because of that, just about all the gold that's ever been mined, going back not hundreds but thousands of years, is still in circulation because it doesn't destroy, it doesn't decay. So if you don't lose it, right, it'll last forever. And so because of that, gold has one of the things I learned about as I was writing this book is the stock to flow ratio, which a lot of Bitcoiners are familiar with. But because of the fact that gold doesn't decay and the fact that we've been mining it for thousands of years, it has a very, very, very high stock to flow ratio, because the stock of it, the existing supply of it, is so large compared to the tiny, 1.5% that we mine every year. So generally speaking, when a commodity has a very high stock to flow ratio like that, it's considered to be scarce, and that increases the typically the value of it. And like I say, before Bitcoin, gold was the scarcest thing there was. I think gold's stock to flow ratio is something like 54, 57, something like that, meaning that it'll take 54 or 57 years at the current rate of production to double the existing supply, which is very high. But Bitcoin is like 4 times that. It's like Bitcoin stock to flow is over like 200, which is like 4 times as high as gold. And then at the next halving, which is 2028, it's going to double again. So the stock to flow of Bitcoin is going to be something like 400, meaning it would take 400 years at then current production to double the supply of Bitcoin. And then at some point, I mean, long after you and I are still around to talk about it, the emission schedule is going to come to a stop. And around, I think it's 2140, there will be no more Bitcoin ever produced, which at that point will give Bitcoin an infinite stock to flow, which there's never been anything like that in the history of the known universe, anything with an infinite stock to flow. So Bitcoin is it's a new thing in the world, man. It's a completely new thing. And it just baffles my mind that so many people don't know more about it. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, there are some natural, I think, challenges with that. People really need a confirmation of someone they trust. I literally got today a call of a buddy of my father, actually, and he has built multiple companies. He's very successful, and he always dismissed this Bitcoin thing, but he knew because of my father that I was this Bitcoin guy. And he asked me today, like, how can I buy Bitcoin? And you know why he called me? Because his bank advisor all of a sudden said, oh yeah, I also have some Bitcoin. And all of a sudden his alarm thing were going on like, oh, my bank advisor now has Bitcoin. Like that, and it's those trivial small things, the social clues, those group psychology things where people are like, oh, now I need Bitcoin. And and I think it will be just, for most of the people, will just be too late when they get their social clue that they all of a sudden, because they don't do the homework and the research themselves, and they rely on social clues in their environment. And most social clues come too late. Like when grandpa and grandma tells you to buy Bitcoin, maybe it's already too late.
Yeah, and we Bitcoiners, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. But we can sometimes feel like we're special, or we're smart, or we're better than other people because we understand Bitcoin and we grasp Bitcoin and we've allocated to Bitcoin, where most of the world is still filled with no coiners who have zero Bitcoin at all. So we can kind of get this kind of haughty attitude that we're, better than. But the truth of the matter is, Robin, we were all no coiners at some point in time, right? We all doubted Bitcoin at first. And until you become a Bitcoiner, everyone doubts Bitcoin until they understand Bitcoin. And none of us were born understanding Bitcoin. In fact, I don't know if you've in doing some of the research for my book, I read through some of the Satoshi's papers that the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute stores online, and I read a lot of his early writings, and including his announcement of Bitcoin to the cryptography mailing list, and almost everyone doubted it. And these are cryptographers, guys who understand cryptography and privacy. This is, back in the, these are the guys who invented PGP, pretty good privacy, which was the first cryptography algorithm that I ever encountered. I mean, these are guys who were in the know. And so when Satoshi announced Bitcoin to the mailing list with a link to the white paper explaining it, almost everyone doubted it. Almost everyone was skeptical of it. I think Hal Finney was one of the very few exceptions to that, who said, "Hey, this looks like a pretty good idea to me. Let's look into it." So, I would just like to admonish our fellow Bitcoiners. Let's not think too highly of ourselves. Let's not get too haughty about this. Because at one point in time, we were all no coiners. At one point in time, we all doubted Bitcoin. Even after the first time when I learned about Bitcoin, again, a friend of mine at work told me about it. He had invested in it, and the number had gone up for him, so he was excited about that. And he told me about it, but I didn't understand it. I had no idea what it was, so I just threw a few bucks at it just to see what would happen. And that was 2017. And I don't think I really, truly grasped, what Bitcoin is. And I'm tempted to say that I grasped everything that there is about Bitcoin, but I don't think that'll ever happen, because the more I learn about Bitcoin, the more there is to learn, about Bitcoin. I've been going down this rabbit hole full bore as fast as possible, actively learning as much about Bitcoin as I can for at least a year now, and I learn something new every single day about Bitcoin. There's always a new aspect of it. I'll watch lots of podcasts, including yours and others, and different people will come with, different aspects about Bitcoin that I never even thought of before. So even though I've been actively traveling down this Bitcoin rabbit hole for over a year now, I still learn new things. In fact, the recent thing that I've come to learn about is the power law. I'm sure have you interviewed Giovanni Santos?
Yeah, he has been on the channel actually already 2 times,
okay.
And I had I had a few other ones also. I had Sina on. He's also in the power law. I think Stephen Paranoid I also have had on, both actually 2 times. So I think I had already 6 or 7 videos dedicated on the power
On the
law.
power law.
But honestly, like I'm not a mathematician. Like I'm very bad in in math, worse than most people probably will think. But it's a fascinating topic. And yeah, well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's just one of the newer things that I learned. And like you, I'm a lawyer, right? So I never studied computer science. I never did very well in math. In fact, one of the reasons I went to law school is because I was so bad in math. So I like you. I mean, I've listened to Giovanni talk about the power law. I've read his writings on X. And on, I think, he posts on Medium as well, and I do my best to try and understand it, and I think I do have some understanding of it. I do understand now what a log graph is and what it looks like, and what it means to say that something like Bitcoin does follow a power law. But I mean, I've given up thinking that I'm ever going to learn everything there is to know about Bitcoin. The more aspects I learn about it, the more directions it can take you. If you want to go into cryptography, you can learn about, which is to interrupt myself. One of the things that's so fascinating to me about Satoshi Nakamoto, and obviously we don't know who he or she or they are, but if he's just one person, what a remarkable intellect that he must have, right? Because he had a deep understanding of not only money, but cryptography, distributed computing, mathematics. I mean, what a phenomenal intellect he must have. And the invention that he gave us, 16, 17 years ago, we're still learning it. There are now college courses devoted to blockchain technology, and this guy just invented it in his, on his laptop. It's amazing to me that there's so much to learn. It amazes me that there's still so much to learn about Bitcoin, and it really amazes me that there's still so many people who know so very little about it. Like I say, like you said, this is the asymmetric bet of a lifetime, it just it amazes me that more people are not aware of it, which again is why I wrote the book. You have I did an interview not too long ago with the Bitcoin libertarian, and one of the things that he says is that every Bitcoiner has a part to play in this revolution. And whatever it is that you're good at, whatever your passion is, you can use that to be a part of this Bitcoin revolution. So obviously guys like you and him, you're good at verbal communication, and you have a passion for broadcasting this information by podcasting. Me, I'm a writer, like I say, I'm a lawyer, which is basically research and writing. That's what I do. I've never written a book before, but I've written lots of, appellate briefs and motion briefs. So I've spent 30 years researching, doing legal research, compiling the information that I learned from that research, and explaining it cogently in a legal brief. And so I just applied those skills to Bitcoin. I did a deep dive into Bitcoin, studying everything I could about it, reading all of the great books, starting with the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous, and A Broken Money, and The Big Print, and every book I could find about Bitcoin. And I just did a deep dive into it. And once I had, gone sufficiently down that rabbit hole, it just dawned on me that, I have information that the world needs. And how can I share that information, right? I could start another podcast, but I setting up this microphone was, not the easiest thing for me. I'm just not, technically savvy like that. But researching, reading, and writing, that's my bailiwick. I'm very good at that. So it just became obvious to me. You know what, Mike? You have this info. You need to write a book, which it took me a while to to come to grips with that, because even though I've done a lot of legal writing, I'm not an author. I've never written a book about anything before. But, writing is writing, and if you can convey something in writing in a concise and cogent way, you can write a book. And I'd like to encourage my competition out there. If you're thinking about writing a book, particularly about Bitcoin, if you think you have something to add to the conversation, I would encourage you to do that. I don't see that as competition. The way I see it, we have 8 billion people on this planet to orange pill. You can't do that by yourself, Robin. I can't do it by myself. We need an army of Bitcoiners to do that. So I would encourage people to compete with me. Write a book about Bitcoin. Write a book about your take on Bitcoin. If you have some specialized knowledge about it, write a book, do a podcast, go out there to the world and spread the news, because we've got 8 billion people that we need to orange pill before it's too late, and I don't think it'll, like I said before, I don't think it'll ever be too late to buy Bitcoin, because it'll never be too late to trade, an infinite fiat currency for a scarce digital asset. It'll never be too late to do that. But I would much rather have, bought Bitcoin at $100 a coin than $100,000 a coin. And at some point in time, if you don't buy it at $100,000, you'll be able to buy it at $200,000, and then $500,000, and then $1 million, right? And in which case, you're not buying Bitcoin anymore; you're buying Satoshis. So I feel it my personal mission, kind of like Michael Saylor, and I know that you interviewed him. I watched that interview just last night. Fascinating interview. But one of the things I like about him is he figured it out, right? That Bitcoin is the best thing you can do with your money, but he didn't keep it to himself, right? He got on the biggest platform he can find, and he told the world, guess what? Bitcoin is the way. Bitcoin is the asymmetric bet. I'm going to take all of my corporate reserves and put them into Bitcoin. And you know what else? You should do it too. So he wasn't trying to keep it to himself. He was trying to spread the information to the world. So, some people have, bad things to say about Michael Saylor. I never will, because he's doing the right thing. He's doing the absolute right thing. Once you find out about Bitcoin, the right thing to do about it is to get as much of it as you possibly can. And that's what he's doing. But more than that, he's sharing that information with the world. He's saying to the world, look, I found this cheat code. I found this asymmetric bet. I found a bet that you cannot lose on, and I'm going all in. I recommend that you follow along with me and make this bet with me. And now, obviously the message is getting out there, and corporations are paying attention and following suit. We now have 21 Capital is doing it. Nakamoto is doing it. Metaplanet is doing it. These other corporations are getting on board, and Michael Saylor is not upset about that. He welcomes the competition, and so that's the way I am. If somebody wants to write a book about Bitcoin, I don't see it as competition. I see it as teamwork, because you'll be able to reach somebody that I'll never be able to reach. Maybe because, like I say, I'll be 63 this year. Maybe I can reach the boomers, whereas you can reach younger generations. Maybe younger generations won't listen to a guy like me with a head full of gray hair. But all of us together, we can do this job. And the job, as I see it, is fulfilling Satoshi's vision. Satoshi invented this phenomenal technology, and they just gave it away. He gave it to the world, for free, asking nothing in return. So I take that as my example. I now understand Bitcoin. I mean, not perfectly. Like I say, I still learn more about Bitcoin all the time, but I understand it enough that for me, my conviction, my understanding, and my conviction has reached the level now that I don't even look at the price. The price is completely irrelevant to me. If it shoots up in value, if it doubles in value, if it triples in value, I'm not selling. If it crashes to zero, I'm not selling. So the price is irrelevant to me. I don't care. Because why? Because I understand what I have. I understand that I have a piece of the scarcest commodity that the world has ever known. And what that scarce commodity is in competition with is fiat currencies that are infinite. There is no limit to the amount of fiat that they can print. So if you have a scarce commodity that's being bought, that's being priced in an infinite fiat currency, you don't worry about the exchange rate, right? Because you know that there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And once you get yours, you're good. It's only going to go up. I mean, it's volatile, right? It'll go up in value, it'll go down in value. But long term, I'm confident. In fact, not only confident, I'm certain. Long term, there's only one thing that the price of Bitcoin is going to do as measured in dollars, and that's go up. It has no choice. It must go up. It's a physical certainty that the price of Bitcoin has to go up because it's measured against infinite fiat. So it's like you say, it's the asymmetric bet of a lifetime. You cannot lose with Bitcoin. You just can't.
I love that, and it really. I don't hear enough people talking about that competition thing because you would think that if you have a podcast or you have a book, you want to have like a unique thing. And I even would encourage people that now say like, oh, I don't have a unique voice. I don't have anything to add. Add it anyways. Because yes. You are probably the worst judge of if you have something to add. There are people out there that think they have a lot to add and they actually don't have a lot to add. And there are people out there that think they have nothing to add and they actually have a lot to add. So you yourself are probably very bad in judging if someone else likes something or not. I myself, I try to predict if an episode is doing good or not, and I'm getting better at it, but honestly, I'm still bad in judging how long people will listen to it, how many people will actually enjoy it. And sometimes I feel like there's an episode was not that good. I put it out there and people write me a DM like, oh, that was the best episode you have ever done. And I'm like, how the hell? Like, I would have put it at the bottom and you put it in right at the top. So don't judge what you're doing. Just do it and see if people like it. Like you will get the market feedback anyways. Do it longer, do it consistent, and eventually you will find people that actually enjoy your stuff. And if you don't, maybe that's a feedback that you have that you need to find a different format. Maybe you're writing books and you actually should start a podcast, or maybe you do TikTok videos and you might actually should make a podcast, like anything like. And this is the big thing that I'm really liking, because like we are all, I don't know, I don't like war words, but like I think this makes it more sensible. We are all soldiers. We are all people that fight for the same thing, and having someone else fight next to each other, that's a great thing. I always love when I have podcasts. Like I had just like 3 days ago with Walker America a podcast, and he has his own Bitcoin podcast. And I love those episodes because this is the closest thing I have to a colleague. Like I see him as a colleague of mine, right, because he's the closest thing that I have to someone that does exactly what I do. He has a podcast, the Bram Kanstein. So many other people that I had on my podcast that do very similar the thing that I do, just not daily. Like that's usually the only difference to other podcasts. The guests are sometimes similar, like the format, the trailer, like all the processes, and we are all doing it. And I feel like we need 10x, 20x, 30x more, and we need those unique voices that just come out and tell their story and tell what they think about Bitcoin, because you never know who you might orange pill with that. Maybe you orange pill a daughter of some guy that owns a company, and all of a sudden this is the Walmart, and you're getting Walmart into the game. Like you don't know who you reach with your message. Just put it out there and don't judge it yourself. Let the market judge it for you. And I think that's a great message, and we don't spread that message enough. People don't believe that they actually can contribute something valuable to Bitcoin, and they can definitely do that. And they don't have to go all in and quit their fiat job and like just you can write on the weekend just an article on Bitcoin, and maybe another article, maybe those articles at some point are a book, and maybe you publish it, and maybe you get invited to podcasts, and maybe all of a sudden you actually can quit the job and you actually are a speaker on the Bitcoin conferences. You never know where things lead, and you just You just and now I'm educating for content creation, but it is something very fulfilling to do, even if you just do it like 2 hours a week, like as a hobby. And everyone should do that, especially if you're big on Bitcoin, because a lot of people don't understand it, and we need more educators. Education is probably the biggest thing you can do in Bitcoin in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Robin. I personally believe that everyone has something to contribute because, like you said, we all have different talents. We all have different qualities. We all have different traits, and you never know what that one no coiner is going to need for the light to flip for him, right? So maybe Michael Saylor is one of the guys that did it for me. But maybe Michael Saylor can't reach somebody who's, maybe opposed to, big corporations or billionaires. There are a lot of people who just have a negative feeling about somebody just because they happen to be a billionaire. So there are people that Michael Saylor are not going to reach, but maybe, a lowly pleb like me. I've never been a billionaire, right? Maybe, they'll be able to relate to me. Maybe they'll read my book and give it a chance. And the way I wrote this book is as if I was just having an orange pilling conversation with one of my best friends. And that's really part of the way that the book came about, because like I say, once the flip switched for me about Bitcoin, and I understood what it was, I couldn't keep it to myself. I was telling everyone, starting with my kids and my family and my closest friends and even strangers in the street. I was just basically telling everyone I could, hey, look at this. This is a chance for you to win. Like me, you've lost your whole life. This is a chance for you to win. So I would just have that conversation with everyone that I could get a hold of. And I would invite friends out to dinner, just for the specific purpose of orange pilling them. And I'd give them a heads up. I'd say, look, I'm going to take you out to dinner, but the reason I'm taking you out to dinner is because you're going to buy some Bitcoin at the at the end of it, And I just had all these, hours long conversations with people, and some of them got it. Thankfully, some of them did. A lot of them still didn't. Because there's really only so much information that you can convey in the course of one conversation. You can tell somebody all about how number go up with Bitcoin, how it started off from less than a penny and now it's over $100,000 a coin, and that'll get some people's attention. But over the course of one dinner conversation, you can't really go into the stock to flow ratio of gold or the history of money or how fiat currencies came about and the big change that what came about when Nixon took us all off the gold standard in 1971. You can't really go very deeply into all that stuff. And this is all kind of information that you really need to understand in order to go full in on Bitcoin, and in order to have full commitment to Bitcoin, conviction about Bitcoin. You really kind of need to understand the big difference between Bitcoin and fiat currency, because those are really the only two choices that we have, Bitcoin or fiat, And if you don't really understand fiat, you can't really understand Bitcoin. And so you can't really, like I say, in the course of one dinner conversation, you can't do a deep dive into the history of fiat currency. You can't do that. So that's, again, another reason why I wrote this book. I was able to take my time and explain. I didn't go into the history of money quite as deeply as Saifedean did in his book, The Bitcoin Standard. But like I say, I don't think you can really understand Bitcoin fully without at least having some working knowledge of fiat, what money is, what fiat is, the difference between a fiat standard and a gold standard, and how that compares to the Bitcoin standard. So I do, in my book, I do take the liberty to explain, briefly the history of money, the history of gold, the history of fiat, and how that is compares and contrasts with Bitcoin. So the book form was obvious for me, because I wanted to be able to convey all of this information, and I couldn't just do that on an X post. I couldn't just do that over a dinner conversation. It was either going to be a series of like Medium articles or a book, And I just decided to put it all into a book. And I did my very best to keep it as concise as possible. It's less than 200 pages, and if I had gone on at the mouth, like I sometimes tend to do, like many lawyers tend to do, it could have easily been a 500-page book. But I really I tried to keep in mind my target audience for this book is no coiners. My book, you are not my target audience because you all already know all this information. But what I'm hoping is that Bitcoiners like you will buy the book to give to their no coiner friends, to orange pill them, because rather than sit down and have a 2 or 3 hour conversation with a no coiner, you can say, hey, I'm into Bitcoin. Here, this book will tell you all about why. And if they have any interest and they read my book, they'll know by the end of it why they should, stop being a no coiner and start being a Bitcoiner. So I really am, I'm proud about the book. I mean, it's not out yet. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to share with your audience, but I really am proud of the book. I think it conveys really precisely what I wanted to explain in detail to the no coiners of the world what Bitcoin is, what a phenomenal breakthrough it is, and why they need to get into it. So that like I say, that's my contribution, to this Bitcoin army. But everyone has something to contribute. I believe that there, all 8 billion people on this planet, none of us are exactly alike. Every one of us is unique in some way. And so that means that you have qualities, you have abilities, you have traits that you can use to reach some people that will never listen to me. And all of us have the ability to do that. And in fact, I believe that if you do it for the right reason, whatever it is, starting a podcast, writing a book, becoming a lecturer at Bitcoin conferences, or just posting on X, or creating memes, or whatever it is you do, right? And this doesn't just apply to Bitcoin, but it does apply to Bitcoin. If you do it for the right reason, it's going to succeed. And if you do, and if that right reason is because it's what you're passionate about, it's what you feel you need to be doing with your time and your energy and your money, it will succeed. And a lot of parents will tell their children, you should go to college, you should study something like medicine or law and get a good degree. I never did that with my kids. I always tried to convey to my kids that your job on this planet is to find your passion. And we all have it. We all have a passion. We're all passionate about something. And I believe that my job on this planet is to find my passion. And I believe that that's the job of everyone on the planet, is to find your passion. And if you find that passion and you chase that passion and you don't get discouraged because even if you're passionate about it, look, writing this book for me, it wasn't easy. I didn't get a lot of help. I had never published before, and every publisher that I reached out to rejected me. Every literary agent I reached out to rejected me, which I don't blame them. I have no history. I've never written a book before. People, before they invest their time and their energy in a project, they want to know that it's going to succeed. So when some schlub like me comes along and says, hey, I've never written a book before, but I've got a really good idea for a book about Bitcoin. Will you publish it for me? Will you be my literary agent? Will you write a foreword for me? Will you write a blurb for me? I got rejection every single time. Right. And that doesn't feel good. That's not happy. But I'm passionate about this project. So no rejection can turn me around. I'm going to see this thing through to the end. The book is finished, right? I've finished the book. I'm just now trying to get it formatted so that, Amazon will accept it on their side and Kindle will accept it on their side, which is probably easy to do for people who've written books before, but I never have. So I'm figuring it out, one step at a time, me and ChatGPT, so it's not easy. And even if you're passionate about what you do, you're going to face challenges. I'm sure you could tell me about challenges that you've faced in launching this podcast, this successful podcast that you have, that you're putting out new shows every single day. You're passionate about it, obviously. You love what you do, obviously. But I'm sure you can tell me that there's been challenges and setbacks and things that were difficult for you in that process. But if you're passionate about what you do, the setbacks won't stop you. They might slow you down, but they won't stop you. So if you're passionate about what you do, you have to succeed. As long as you don't quit, right? If you do what you're passionate about and you refuse to quit, you can't fail. Just like Bitcoin. Bitcoin cannot fail, right? And if you do what you're passionate about and you refuse to quit, whatever that is, writing a book, starting a podcast, whatever it is, you will succeed. So in addition to the message of Bitcoin, I think that's one of my messages for your audience. If you want to, join this revolution, if you want to push this revolution forward that Satoshi Nakamoto started, you are qualified to do that. If you've never, hosted a podcast before, you're qualified to do that. If you've never written a book before, you're qualified to do that. If you've never given a lecture at a conference before, you're qualified to do that if that's what you're passionate about and if you refuse to quit. You will succeed. I guarantee it.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Robin Seyr podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you, 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition, beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin Seyr podcast. We have limited editions. We have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. And we have right now a summer sale going on for 15% 10% off. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today for $186. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. I love that. That's really great because I feel that so hard, and starting something takes way longer than you think, and things are not as great as they seem, but they are way more. How should I say that? The thing is, when you first get started, and for me this was very disencouraging. I started in 2020 actually with starting my first YouTube channel, and it didn't get a lot of traction. I got disencouraged, and I stopped after like a year, and then I stopped in 2021, got disencouraged, and completely went off social media. And then it was 2022, and in 2023 I was like, let's do some tweets again. Like Twitter, all of a sudden this works. I put more hours in, I put more things in there. And then I grew from like 0 to, 5,000, 6,000 Twitter followers, something like that in a year. And I was like, oh, this works. Let's have some video format. And I took my failed YouTube channel with like 100 followers that I had from like 2020. And I was like, let's post content on there. It was not easy. In the first 3 months, I gained like 20 new subscribers. I now get 20 new subscribers like on a bad day. On a good day, I get like 100, 200. It was very long, and things seem like they went quick, and it's easy, but it's actually it takes way longer, and it's all the hours and the things that you don't see. But yeah, like I fully agree. And then there's like I don't want to get into that, but like I could get in a lot of really interesting challenges I faced along the way where this podcast stopped. A lot of times, almost. it's like it is almost, and then this small willpower where like, I still want to do it. Like it's too important to not do it. I mean, you have way more experience and way more life behind you, and can talk way better about that. But I just have this small podcast that I started like not even 2 years ago. But there's like a lot of challenges that come your way, and I think the differentiation between successful and not that successful, or like non-successful, is just the degree of how much can you withstand and still keep going, like if that makes sense. It was just like, oh yeah, like I still do this. And one thing that actually helped me get through this, and I don't know where I heard this. I'm sure I heard this on some podcast somewhere. Is the challenges make sure that this is something special. Without the challenges, everyone would do it. And if there's a lot of challenges, you can be looking like, oh, this is this challenge, and if I overcome that, X amount of people would just stop at that point. So the more challenges you actually overcome, the closer the bigger the filter is for how many people are willing to do this. And so, yeah, it just gets in a good way, it gets lonelier and lonelier. It's like, because less people can compete with you because you've gone further than other people.
Yeah. And I think, I think the challenges are part and parcel of it. I don't think you can really grow your conviction without overcoming challenges. I mean, look at Bitcoin itself, right? I mean, it'll shake you out, right? An 80% drawdown in price. If you don't have high conviction, you're out of the market. But once you understand it to a deep level, like you and I do right now, like I say, for me, the price is irrelevant. If it went down to $100 a coin, you know what I would do? I would sell my house and buy as much Bitcoin as I can at $100 a coin, because price is irrelevant to me. But that's because, I went through the challenges of the up markets and the down markets and learning to hold. And and just being convicted. And, if you read, before studying Bitcoin, another thing that I like to study is the Bible, and if you read the stories in the Bible, all these great heroes of faith, all of them, Moses, Abraham, Job, all of them, the story about them is about their triumph and their success in faith and how they overcame, to do the thing that God told them to do. But every single one of them faced, consequential challenges that almost turned them away from their journey. Every single one of them. Job is I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Job, but he's the prime example of that. He was one of God's servants, and basically God allowed the devil to take away everything from Job. He had a nice, prosperous farm and a happy, healthy family. His family all died. His farm got destroyed. And even his wife came to him and said, look, Job, this is not working out. Why don't you just go ahead and curse God and die and be done with it? And what Job said that turned it around for him, he said, yea, though he slay me, yet will I serve him. Meaning that even if he kills me, my conviction and my faith in God is so strong that I'm going to still serve him even if he kills me, right? And then, of course, that's when everything turned around for him. He got all of his wealth back, his family, his health, and everything came back for him. And I think that's a journey that we all have to go through. If you are passionate about something, look, there's a lot of people in the world, Robin, unfortunately, who aren't going to do much with their life. They're going to get some miserable 9-to-5 job, and they're going to work it, and they're going to hate their job, but they're going to get just enough money to, pay their bills and just, live a day-to-day life until they die. And that's the end of it. And that's nothing wrong with it. If that's how people choose to live their lives. But I think life is too precious to live life that way. We all have just a very, very finite amount of time here on the planet. I talked about the scarcity of gold. I talk about the scarcity of Bitcoin, which is much more scarce than even gold. But the one thing that's even scarcer than Bitcoin is time, human time, and we only get one go round on this planet. You only get one chance to live it. And so I think that gives us every reason to live it the best that we can. And what that means is, using the talents, the abilities, the skills that God has blessed us with. And we all have them, right? We all have some talent. We all have some skill. We all have some trait that we can use to maximum potential. And if we don't do that, we're wasting it, right? It's like having, a bank full of money and never spending any of it, never buying any Bitcoin with it. You have it, but you've just wasted it. And I would encourage your audience, use your talents. God has blessed you with talents, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be about Bitcoin. Maybe your talent is some other endeavor. But whatever it is, chase that talent. Find what it is that you're passionate about. And a lot of people have a difficult time finding what it is that they're passionate about, but it's really easy to find, right? What is it that you enjoy doing? What is the one thing that you could do all day long, even if you didn't make any money doing it? What's that one thing that you would be happy to do all day long? That right there is your passion. For me, it's things like writing and communicating about things that I'm that are important to me, like Bitcoin. I could do this. You're not paying me to do this podcast. I'm not paying you to do it, but we're doing it because it's something that we're passionate about. We're talking about something that we think is important. We're talking about something that you and I think has the potential to change the world, right? We're not rocket scientists. We're not, Elon Musk. We're not building a rocket that's going to take humanity to Mars potentially. We're not powerful politicians. We can't sway public policy, but we understand Bitcoin. You and I both, we understand Bitcoin, and we understand the opportunity that it presents to people who take advantage of it. And we understand the opportunity that will be missed by people who ignore it. And one of the things that just boggles my mind, Robin, is that there are some people who actually know about Bitcoin and still reject it, right? Example is Peter Schiff, the famous gold bug. He even comes to Bitcoin conferences, right? I was at the last Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. Peter Schiff was there, and his talk was probably one of the most well-attended talks there, right? People flocked to hear Peter Schiff talk about Bitcoin and what a Ponzi it is. So he knows about Bitcoin. People have talked to him people have given him Bitcoin. He got a Bitcoin address and just threw it up and said, look, if you want to give me free Bitcoin, I'm not going to buy any of it with my own money. I'm not going to trade any gold for it, but here's my address. You want to send me some free Bitcoin? I'll take it. I'll hold it. And people have sent him Bitcoin. So he owns Bitcoin. And he's been to the Bitcoin conferences. He's talked to the likes of Saifedean Moose. He knows Bitcoin, and he still rejects it. That boggles my mind. So there are going to be people like that. But I think the vast majority of people, if you talk to them about Bitcoin, if you explain to them about Bitcoin in a way that they can understand it, part of the problem for me in understanding Bitcoin is it was just so far outside my experience. I was a lawyer and I made money. I've earned money all my life. And like I said, I knew enough to know that inflation was eating away my purchasing power. So I can't stick my money in a bank and expect it to be able to buy the things that I need in the future. So I knew I had to buy things like stocks and real estate and things like that because money in the bank is just melting away. I knew that, but I didn't have a need for Bitcoin because I was able to live my life. I was able to, buy this house and go on vacation and do the things that I wanted to do without Bitcoin. So I didn't really have a pressing need for Bitcoin. And that's one of the things that I saw in your interview with Michael Seyr. When you have a need to know, you'll know, right? When you have no other option, right? If you live in Zimbabwe and you're facing, 100% inflation or prices doubling every day, you desperately have a need to know that there's something better, something you have to choose. And so people like that, if they have a need to know, it's very simple to orange pill them, right? Because all you have to do is say, look, you've got a big, big, big problem, right? Your money is melting away faster than you can do anything with it. Bitcoin fixes that. Here's Bitcoin. And people like that will grasp onto it. But people who are, if you're a billionaire and you've, made your money by running some sort of traditional corporation and you've got a big giant mansion and a yacht and, you don't need Bitcoin, right? Because you've already won at life. But there's a lot of us who are not in that position. There's a lot of people that I know personally who could really benefit from Bitcoin. Has changed my life. Bitcoin has changed my life. And I know that there are a lot of people that if they expose themselves to Bitcoin, if they understand Bitcoin, if they learn Bitcoin, and they get the conviction that understanding that education will bring, it can change your life too. Because you can save your wealth, your time, your effort in a form of money that is not melting away, that's not melting in value, that is in fact doing the opposite, is growing in value. So your money is working with you, not against you. That changes everything. That changes everything because it changes your entire relationship with money, which can change your entire relationship with employment, and your relationship with people and everything. I mean, Bitcoin can really cause a real paradigm shift in almost every aspect of your life once you understand it. Once you understand it and you know what it is and you know what to do with it. So, like you, man, that's the reason I'm so passionate about it, because there's so unbelievably, there's still so very many people that know nothing, next to nothing about Bitcoin. Like I say, well over 90% of the planet not only don't own Bitcoin, but are completely ignorant about Bitcoin. So we've got work to do, you and me. We've got a job to do.
I think we'll definitely have a lot of more work to do. And I want to relate the thing that we talked about, perseverance and being disciplined back to Bitcoin. And I grabbed a very old and very well shared meme on Bitcoin. You probably have seen it. And
I have, yeah.
And I think the way to even get to Bitcoin is difficult because you kind of have to overcome the first hurdle that most people have to overcome, where you probably saw Bitcoin before you bought it. So you have to overcome that. You probably saw Bitcoin at a cheaper price, and you have to overcome that you now have to pay for a higher price, and you have to overcome all the sometimes silly notion that you have on Bitcoin, and actually like get educated and have this ego death on your own. But then actually, once you get started with holding, it's a lot harder than people think. Like there's down days. There's people where in your environment, people say like, oh, like it's bad for you, like this and that. And it can feel really, really hard to just hold on to the Bitcoin, especially in the beginning, and especially in the first 1, 2, 3 years. I feel like once you get over one cycle, you have seen it all, and you kind of know how it goes, and you see the patterns, and you see you kind of look through the whole all the things. But how do you look at when we talk about discipline and holding through and having that perseverance, relating to just Bitcoin hodling?
So yeah, it's an excellent question. So like I said, once I convinced myself, what an asymmetric bet that Bitcoin is, I basically immediately told everyone that I cared about, hey, stop what you're doing. This is Bitcoin. Go buy some. Buy as much of it as you can, as quickly as you can, and do it right now. And some of my friends did that, right? And as the price of the Bitcoin went up, they got excited and they thanked me. And then, of course, the price of Bitcoin always comes down. And some of my friends who bought when the price went down, they panicked and they sold it at a loss. So now when I'm orange pilling people, I don't tell them, hey, just take my word for it. There's this Bitcoin thing. Buy as much of it as you can, as quickly as you can. I don't do that anymore. I tell them that, hey, here's this Bitcoin thing. I think it's the asymmetric bet of a lifetime. Learn about Bitcoin. Study it. Learn what it is. Learn about what scarcity is. Learn the properties of Bitcoin, about the fact that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever. Learn how that compares to the fiat system that we're in. Learn about, because most of us don't even know really. I lived my entire life in the fiat system, but I didn't know what the fiat system was. I had no idea what it was about. I thought green pieces of dollar bills, I thought that was money. That's not money, right? It is not money at all, right? It's basically a representation of money. Realistically, it's a representation of what used to be money, right? Because back before 1933, if you had $1, you could take that dollar to the bank and trade it for gold. That's money, right? But once they decoupled the dollar from gold, where you can't trade it for anything, it's no longer money. It's basically just a trust token, right? I have this green trust token that has no inherent value whatsoever, no intrinsic value whatsoever, but the guy at the Apple store doesn't know that. So if you take enough of these green trust tokens to the Apple store, they'll give you an iPhone in exchange for it, but there's nothing of value to the dollar. It's basically a fraud, but it's a fraud that we all buy into. So it works. So what I tell people now is learn about money, learn about fiat, learn about Bitcoin. And then as your education increases, as your conviction about Bitcoin increases, then let your allocation increase. So what I will tell people to do is to get off zero, right? If you have absolutely no Bitcoin whatsoever, get off zero. Buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. Buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. An amount that's so small that even if it went to zero, it wouldn't make a difference for you. But just buy some and learn. Those are the two instructions that I give to people. Buy yourself a little bit of Bitcoin and start learning about Bitcoin. And then, that's all you have to tell them. If they follow that advice, they buy a little bit of Bitcoin, because what happens when you buy a little bit of Bitcoin is it makes you watch it. You'll start watching the charts every day, right? Oh, it's up today. Oh, it's down today. And if you're learning about Bitcoin, you're learning about fiat currency, you're reading good books like the Bitcoin Standard by Seyfried Moose. It's a fantastic book. Broken Money by Lynn Alden. Excellent book. The Big Print by Lawrence Lepard. Another excellent book. So the information is out there. So I tell people now, buy yourself a little bit of Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin, read a book about Bitcoin, Hopefully my book will be out soon. You can read mine, and learn it. And as you learn it, your conviction will grow, and then your allocation can grow. And then the dips don't matter to you, right? You're not going to panic sell at a loss. And that breaks my heart to this day, that I actually talked some people into buying Bitcoin, without also educating them about Bitcoin, so that they had the conviction to ride through the ups and the downs. Because within the investment, Bitcoin included, we all hope we're going to buy it at the bottom, right? And then it'll just be a chart that's straight up and to the right for the rest of eternity, right? That's what we all hope. I bought Bitcoin at the bottom. It's only going to go up for here. That never happens. That never happens. I have had Bitcoin go down so much that literally half of my net worth was gone, right? Basically cut my net worth in half. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was concerned. When you see your net worth reduced by half, you'd have to be pretty, confident not to be concerned by that. But, and I was concerned, but I understood Bitcoin enough that I did not panic sell, right? I just understood that, well, I'm going to be underwater for a while, but eventually Bitcoin will come back. And of course, Bitcoin did come back. And now I'm in profit again. And, we hit an all-time high, just a week or two ago, right? 123,000 per coin, something like that, 124 maybe. And now it's down, we've lost $10,000 off of that. That's the Bitcoin way, man. You can't be afraid of the ups and downs. You have to accept the good with the bad. And the worst thing about Bitcoin is the volatility, because it can be very scary at some times to watch your net worth reduced by 20%, 50%, or even more. Some people were around in the early days and saw 80% drawdowns in the price of Bitcoin. That would be very concerning, especially if you don't have the understanding, the education, and the conviction. So there's one of the things I say in my book is Bitcoin isn't perfect, because nothing is perfect. We live in an imperfect world, but Bitcoin is as perfect as money gets, and the upsides are unlimited, but the downside is the volatility. It is going to test you. You're not going to buy Bitcoin at the bottom, and it's not going to go straight up and to the right right after you buy it. It's going to fluctuate in value. It's going to be volatile. But when you understand it enough, the volatility doesn't bother you, because volatility is not bad. Risk of loss is bad, right? If there was some likelihood or even possibility that Bitcoin might collapse to zero and never recover, that would be a bad thing. But volatility is not a bad thing unless you panic and sell at the bottom, right? If I have Bitcoin, let's say I bought Bitcoin at the top, at the all-time high, $124,000 a coin, and now it's crashed to $113,000 a coin. Well, if I don't sell, it's not bad for me, because at some point in time, it's going to go back up to the all-time high, and then it'll make a new all-time high. So volatility is not bad unless you don't know how to handle it, right? If you understand what you have, if you have the education, if you have the information, and that leads to the conviction, then volatility doesn't bother you. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm now to the point where volatility is a good thing for me. When the price dips, I think, great. If I happen to have some fiat around, I get to buy some sats on discount, right? I get to buy my favorite asset for it's on sale today. So when the price goes down, I love it. And I allocate as much fiat to Bitcoin as I can when the price goes down. And when the price goes back up, I just go back to my regular DCA schedule, because I buy Bitcoin every week, and like I said, I'm 63, so I really, at this point in my life, I probably have enough Bitcoin to live out the rest of my retirement for myself. But I keep stacking, not for myself, but for my kids, right? Because they're going to inherit my Bitcoin. So I don't slow down, man. This is the asymmetric, as you said so correctly, this is the asymmetric bet of a lifetime. And I'm making that bet for me. I'm making that bet for my family. I'm making that bet for my kids. And I'm doing everything like Michael Seyr. I'm doing everything that I can to get people to compete with me, right? If I'm buying Bitcoin, you get in too, and you buy Bitcoin too, right? Buy more than me. I want people to buy more than me. I want them to, because you can't, no matter how much you buy, it's not going to affect how much I have. And I already know that the price of my Bitcoin is not going down. And like, one of the things that Michael Saylor probably also understands is that the more people that become committed to Bitcoin and allocate to Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin, the faster the price goes up. So it's a win-win for everybody, you know? So I want you to buy Bitcoin. If that means that, you know, the price of my Bitcoin goes higher, then please buy my Bitcoin. Buy it all. You know, I don't get mad at Michael Saylor when he announces every week that he's buying another, you know, $1 billion in Bitcoin. I don't get mad about that. I'm like, great, go for it. You know, keep buying it. Keep making the price of Bitcoin go up. God bless you.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
And man, you are one of those guests that I haven't seen on any other podcast, and you're just so great. Like you're one of them. Like, you should have been on the Bitcoin podcast circuit already like 10 years ago, and I hope and I feel like that my audience also will appreciate what great value you bring today. There's so many different topics I still want to get into with you, but I think we just have to make a second round, a second podcast with you in maybe half a year or something like that. One thing maybe that I'm still interested in, because I don't have a lot of lawyers on my show. There are here and there some lawyers on the show, but with the lawyer background and with your unique background, is there anything that you see that how you see Bitcoin differently than other people? Is there something that you see as a lawyer, as your background, as what you have learned, what you've practiced all your life, that you see like, oh, I have one unique way or perspective to look at Bitcoin to what I see mostly out there?
Yeah, I think the one way that my legal background impacts my thinking about Bitcoin is understanding the legislative process. And I know you're an Austrian, so you may not keep close tabs on what's going on with American politics and legislation. But yeah, I'm sure you heard that, you know, back in July, we had Crypto Week here in the United States, where the Congress voted on a number of bills, the Bitcoin Act and the Clarity Act, and a whole set of acts designed to engender clarity around digital assets and cryptocurrencies and things like that. And that is huge for me. I mean, not so much has happened, but it's huge for me that, especially with the election of Donald Trump, that the United States government has effectively thrown its weight behind Bitcoin in particular and cryptocurrencies in general. That's huge, because one of my fears about Bitcoin before Donald Trump was elected was that the governments were going to attack it. You know, Joe Biden, who was president before Donald Trump, he was anti-crypto. I mean, his administration was actively targeting crypto and cryptocurrency businesses, and they were doing regulation by legislation, you know, enforcing all these actions against companies like Coinbase and DeFi companies. And I was really concerned about that, because obviously, if you know, Bitcoin is made illegal, or there's capital controls put on it, or it's excessively taxed, or they shut down the on-ramps to it, which they were trying to do, making it difficult for people to access cryptocurrency through their banking channels, it would you know, impede the growth and the adoption of Bitcoin. And I was really concerned about that, because frankly, Robin, one of the things I've learned about Bitcoin, and I've never really said this publicly before, because it's not really something that I want to get around too much, but Bitcoin is really a direct challenge to the status quo. It's a direct challenge to fiat currency, and it's a direct challenge to the fiat currency system. And as Bitcoin adoption grows, I don't think that bodes well in the long term for the dollar, which is the global reserve currency, or for the entire global fiat system. And I don't know really how clearly our politicians understand that. I mean, Donald Trump, God love him, he's all full bore crypto, right? He's promised to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. But it makes me wonder if he understands what that what that really means, for the dollar, because the U.S. dollar is the tool by which we spread our power throughout the world. Our geopolitical power is directly tied to the U.S. dollar, and Bitcoin is a direct challenge to the hegemony of the dollar. And it seems like, thankfully, that a lot of our politicians don't understand that. But I think other politicians down the road may see that and may try to attack Bitcoin. So back to your question about, what is my my legal background? How does that impact my thinking on Bitcoin? The way it impacts my thinking on Bitcoin is that while Trump is in office, while we have this pro-crypto Trump administration, we need to do everything we can to establish Bitcoin, to establish the legality of Bitcoin and regulatory certainty around Bitcoin. So, I mean, it's great that Trump signs all these pro-crypto executive orders. But the thing about an executive order is that the very next president who comes in can undo every single one of those executive orders just by making a new executive order. So we have to get this legislation passed by Congress, because once Congress passes a law, it can only be undone by another legislative act of Congress, which is not easy to do without a wide majority. So I am anxious that the Trump administration and the current Congress, that they make, and I'm thankful that Trump hit the ground running. I mean, he's only been, in office for like 8 months now, but he's hit the ground running, and he's basically done everything that he can to fulfill his promise of making America the crypto capital of the world. And I just hope that he doesn't slow down with that. I hope he keeps running full steam ahead, because we don't know who the next president is going to be. And we don't know what the next administration is going to look like. And we don't know what the next Congress is going to look like. And if all we have is presidential executive orders supporting the adoption of Bitcoin, that can all be undone, with the stroke of a pen. So I'm glad that Congress is moving on it. I hope that they keep moving on it. And I just hope that we can, and I love to see another reason I love to see the corporate and institutional adoption of Bitcoin is because once you get entities like BlackRock and all these large ETFs allocating to Bitcoin, the Fidelities of the world allocating to Bitcoin, it just becomes that much more entrenched. And so every day my fears about Bitcoin are lessened a little bit more. The more it becomes adopted, the more people, institutions, corporations, sovereign states, the more we all allocate to Bitcoin, the more solid and secure the foundation of Bitcoin becomes, and the more solid and secure the future of Bitcoin becomes. So that's my main concern right now. While we have a pro-crypto administration, let's slam it home, brother, while he's in office, because we need to make sure that the next administration can't come along and try to undo that.
I very much agree with that. And as you well know, as you watch the show, I have one question for each and every one of my new podcast guests. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
I think the thing you can learn from me is the value of time. I've come to appreciate Bitcoin as the scarcest digital asset, the scarcest asset of all time, but time is even scarcer than that. And especially looking at it from my perspective, I've got a lot more years behind me than I have ahead of me. So I am very much aware of my mortality, but it doesn't frighten me. I just use it as fuel for the fire. As I see it, I've got only a handful of decades ahead of me, and whatever change I'm going to make in this world, whatever impact I'm going to have in this world, I need to do it now. right? I no longer have the time to delay. I can't procrastinate because once the 21st millionth Bitcoin has been mined, that's it. It's over. There's never another one. And once I reach my last breath on this earth, that's it. It's over. I'll never have another one, and I'll never have another opportunity to make a change in the world. To spread some knowledge, some education, to do good in the world. And that's my goal at the end of the day is not to die with the most Bitcoin. My goal at the end of the day, Robin, is to die having done the most good in the world that I can do. And I don't have a whole lot of time left, And so what you can learn from me is the importance of time, right? Bitcoin is important. Your job is important. Your health is important. Your relationships are important. But nothing is more important to you than your time. So because of that, be careful what you trade your time for, right? People who are selling their time for a miserable 9-to-5 job, I would encourage you to think about that, to think about the things in life that you're most passionate about, and to think about the finite time that you have left to ignite those passions, and think long and hard about how you spend your time, right? You should think hard about how you spend your Bitcoin. You should think a lot harder about how you spend your time.
That's beautiful, man. I think that's we can print that out and hang it on the walls. we definitely should do that. We have ended in the podcast where, as you know, the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question: what's something that most Bitcoiners are wrong about?
Something most Bitcoiners are wrong about? Well, I don't know if I would say most Bitcoiners, but I think a lot of Bitcoiners assume that Bitcoin can't lose, that Bitcoin is a sure thing. It's like you and I have already said a couple times during this interview. It's the most asymmetric bet in history. I've bet my financial future on Bitcoin, but I'm aware of the fact that Bitcoin faces challenges. Even now, I mean, it's overcome a lot of challenges, right? It's lasted for the past 16, 17 years. It's now adopted by not only individuals like you and me, but corporations and even nation states. El Salvador, as you know, is the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender. Now, the United States, the most powerful economic and military power on the planet, is committed to making the United States the crypto capital of the world. So Bitcoin has had a lot of successes, but even with all that success, its future is not guaranteed. And in fact, one of the things that has concerned me lately about Bitcoin, and I know we're almost at the end of the podcast, and I don't want to start up a whole new subject of discussion, but one of the things I've been looking into recently, one of the things I've been, like I say, you can never stop learning about Bitcoin. One of the things I've been learning recently about Bitcoin is the fee market security issue. Essentially, what happens to Bitcoin once the last Bitcoin is mined and miners are no longer getting paid with the block subsidy? Their income depends entirely on transaction fees. What does that mean for miner profitability? What does that mean for network security? I'm sure you understand that one of the reasons that Bitcoin is the single most robust, secure computer network in the world is because of the contribution that the miners are making, because of the enormous hash rate that the Bitcoin network has. That's because miners are incentivized to keep mining, right? Because every block they mine, they get 3.125 Bitcoin from mining that block. But in 2008, that's going to turn into less than 2 Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin block subsidy is going to continue having every 4 years until we get to 0. And so at some point in time, miners are going to have to depend on transaction fees for their revenue, much more than the block subsidy. And transaction fees right now are very low, and transaction throughput is low. I mean, there's not a lot of transaction because we're all hodlers, right? We get our Bitcoin. What do? We throw it into cold storage and we leave it there, right? We're not using Bitcoin to buy coffee or buy houses or buy anything. We're using Bitcoin as basically our own personal strategic reserve, And so when you hold Bitcoin and you don't transact with it, that means that there's not many transaction fees, and miners don't care about that now because they're mining for block subsidies. But at some point in time, the block subsidy is not going to be enough, and so that's going to mean that either there's going to have to be a lot more transactions, or the transaction fees are going to have to go a lot higher, or miners are going to start to capitulate, meaning that they'll just turn off their mining rigs because they're no longer profitable. And that calls into question the security of the network. So this is not something that's an imminent threat to Bitcoin, but it's something that every Bitcoiner should be aware about. And most Bitcoiners, I very rarely hear any Bitcoiner talking about that, the fee market security issue. And that's one of the things that's been kind of not literally keeping me up at night, but it's one of the things that I've been concerned about. And one of the things I've been researching and reading about and trying to educate myself about as much as possible, because if we don't have miners, we don't have a network. And that could be disastrous. I don't expect that to happen. I expect that things will happen. I expect that transaction fees will go up and that by that time, Bitcoin will be used as a base layer for huge transaction, kind of like FedWire is today for international transactions and interbank, multi-million-dollar settlements. And so if you're settling, $500 million between banks, paying a $10,000 transaction fee is probably not of concern to you. But you and I, we're not going to be, buying coffee at Starbucks if we have to pay a $10,000 transaction fee to do it, So I believe that there will be solutions and that Bitcoin will survive. But I think most Bitcoiners just assume that because Bitcoin has thrived thus far and has grown to a $2 trillion market cap and is now being considered as for a strategic reserve in the United States, and the United States is going to make itself the the crypto capital of the world. Bitcoin has come a long way, but there are still, threats out there, and we need to be cognizant of them. And thankfully, those who matter most about this, they're aware of it and they're working on it. And I'm talking specifically about Bitcoin developers and researchers. So this is not something new, not something that they are not aware about. But your average everyday pleb Bitcoiner, I bet probably some percentage of your audience watching this podcast, this conversation that we're having right now, some percentage of them, this will be the first time they've ever thought about, the fee market security issue. So it's something that I think we should start paying more attention to.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because there are a lot of, Bitcoin up until now is a miracle. If you think about that, how tiny the chances are that Bitcoin actually is already this was what it is right now, and on how many points it could have failed. It's a miracle till now. And I also think, as we said before, right now is the best risk reward ratio, but we also have to stay vigilant. We also have to keep putting our power in there. And I think we always say, Bitcoin will continue anyways. And I do think that's true to a certain extent, as long as it stays decentralized and secure.
Yes.
As long as those things are correct, then it will become the global reserve currency and asset, as I believe. But we have to work for that. The good thing is we are all incentivized to work for it. As we're putting our monetary energy in Bitcoin, we're incentivized to defend it. We're incentivized to start podcasts. We're incentivized to write books. We're incentivized to educate other people and to write code and to make the ecosystem better. And just really briefly on the security issue, I do think main layer transactions will become extremely expensive. We are riding right now in a Rolls Royce if we are using the base layer. And we are used now, like I pay people in Colombia in Bitcoin, and I pay them directly in Bitcoin, and it costs me 70 cents to do that because the mempool is completely empty. And I honestly love that because it doesn't cost me a lot of money to pay them. But if it just costs more, it just means I have to go a layer up, which is normal, and this is how Bitcoin scales. And this will come. We have already seen times where Bitcoin transaction fees were tremendously high, way higher than right now, but more because of things that have been done on the blockchain, not just because it's used as a medium of exchange. But as more and more people actually move up and get their conviction more and more into Bitcoin, as for example me, 1.5 years ago, actually, I hadn't had any income in Bitcoin. I hadn't had any expenses in Bitcoin. Now, most of my income is directly in Bitcoin. So I earn Bitcoin, and a substantial amount of my expenses are also direct in Bitcoin. So it's also so funny because I get sometimes the comments like, Bitcoin will never be a medium of exchange. What are you talking about? I already use it as a medium of exchange. I only earn and spend in Bitcoin every single week.
Nice.
It is already a medium of exchange. Like it doesn't need to become one because it already is.
Right.
So that's always funny for me to forget the comments. No, it will never be. Like, it's like it already is.
Right.
But the point is, like, the more people that will get closer and closer to Bitcoin standard, they will be forced to earn in Bitcoin and spend in Bitcoin. There are more people that demand to be paid in Bitcoin, and the more people demand to be paid in Bitcoin, the more people will spend in Bitcoin because someone has to pay the people that demand to be paid in Bitcoin. And it is a natural progression. And I think for the next 5-10 years, we will at some point come out of the store of value phase, and more people will use it as a medium of exchange. I realized that I'm on the very early upfront cycle where I'm one of the only ones that actually use it on a weekly basis, almost daily basis now, where I earn and spend in Bitcoin from my self-custody wallet. I realized that's not the norm. Most Bitcoiners just have it as a savings vehicle and spend and don't spend it and just save in there because they have the fiat, and that's fine. That's just the phase that we're in. And so I hear you. The security issue is one that we have to be concerned about, and that's actually from one of the smarter Bitcoin critics is something that comes up. And also one of the other things would be, for example, the block template for Bitcoin miners issue, that we don't have a lot of mining pools, the thing that Ocean is kind of tackling. So there are things that we have to be staying vigilant and actually look at it, and don't put a blind eye to it and say like, oh, well, Bitcoin, we're going to the moon. I can just sleep on the couch and don't do anything. Especially as early soldiers in full circle back to where we started, as early soldiers in this Bitcoin revolution, I think we have some sort of responsibility to play our part. And you don't have to be now researching how to write code for Bitcoin. This will only be a handful of people, but educate people, research things, make people aware, like do your small part in Bitcoin. And yeah, I'm very passionate about that. But we have extended our podcast time. It's very long. I think there's only like 10 or 12 podcasts where I went over the 1.5 hours. This is one of them. So a sign that we have to make a second episode at some point here.
Well, that's one of the risks you run when you have a lawyer on your podcast, because lawyers love to talk. So.
And I love to listen. That's why I have a podcast and ask questions. But yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you? And once you publish your book, where can they find it? Maybe you post the link on your Twitter or something like that.
Yeah, the best place to find me is on X. I go by my name, Michael Hollomon Jr., although my handle is a little funky. It's Uncle Skunkle, Uncle_Skunkle, no C's, all K's, but it's kind of weird, but it's easy to find. And if you find me on X, there's a link on my profile page to my link tree that'll take you to the website for the book, and my Facebook page if you're interested in that. So the best way to find me is on X.
Is there a story behind that or just random?
Yeah, real quick. I did a podcast years ago with a friend of mine, and we were nothing about Bitcoins, just like random, talking. And I didn't want, to use my real name for that. So I just used, my middle name is Powers. Michael Powers. Hollomon is my name. So on that podcast, I went by the name Uncle Powers. That's what everybody on the podcast called me. And so when I first started my X account, which back then was Twitter, I was using it to promote that podcast. So I went by that time by the podcast name Uncle Powers, and I used Uncle Skunkle as the as the handle. So it just kind of stuck with me over the years.
Uncle Powers. And yeah, thank you so much for being on, Uncle. And also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.